My name is Ella, and I'm 68 years old. I never thought my own daughter would betray me so completely. The moment Sophia ripped my phone from my hands and smashed it on the floor is burned into my memory forever. Her eyes cold as ice as she said, "You won't need this anymore. I'll decide what's best for you." That night I cried myself to sleep. By sunrise I had made my decision. I disappeared without a trace. I'd love to know where you're watching from today. Please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more stories of resilience. What would you have done in my shoes? My life changed forever in that moment. I was happily married to my husband Richard for 34 wonderful years before losing him to pancreatic cancer 12 years ago. We raised our only daughter Sophia in our cozy 3-bedroom house in Portland, Oregon. The same house I lived in until that fateful day I decided to vanish. Sophia was such a sweet child growing up. She had Richard's dark, curly hair, and my blue eyes, a combination that charmed everyone she met. From an early age, she showed remarkable intelligence, reading chapter books by first grade and winning the state spelling bee in fifth. I still remember how she threw her little arms around my neck when they announced her name as the winner. "Mommy, I did it just like you said I could," she had exclaimed, her gap-toothed smile radiating pure joy. Richard and I weren't wealthy, but we gave Sophia everything we could. I worked as an elementary school teacher for 40 years, while Richard was a civil engineer for the city. We saved diligently, lived modestly, and prioritized our daughter's education above all else. When Sophia was accepted to Columbia Law School, I was bursting with pride. Even after Richard's diagnosis, we insisted she continue her studies while we managed his care at home. "Your future is the best legacy we can leave," Richard told her during one of his better days. "Don't worry about us." After Richard passed, Sophia threw herself into her studies, graduating with honors and landing a position at a prestigious law firm in Seattle. Within 5 years, she had made junior partner specializing in corporate law. She met Michael, a neurosurgeon, at a charity gala, and they married in an elegant ceremony at a vineyard outside Portland. I remember feeling slightly out of place at their wedding. Sophia had chosen everything to reflect her new, sophisticated lifestyle: the 7-course dinner, the string quartet, the designer dress. When her law partners asked about my teaching career, I noticed Sophia quickly changing the subject to something she deemed more interesting. The first time I visited their 5-bedroom home in an exclusive Seattle neighborhood, Sophia gave me a tour that felt more like a museum visit than a daughter showing her mother her new home. "Mum, please don't touch the sculpture. It's an original piece from a rising artist Michael's hospital commissioned," she cautioned. When I reached out to feel the texture of a strange metal object in their foyer. As the years passed, Sophia's attitude toward me shifted subtly. Phone calls became shorter and less frequent. When we did speak, she would often interrupt my stories about my garden club or book discussions. "Mum, that's nice, but I need to tell you about the fundraiser I'm chairing," she would say, dismissing my life as trivial compared to hers. When I visited for holidays, Sophia began making comments about my appearance, suggesting I needed to update my style. "Mum, those shoes are so outdated, and that hairstyle ages you. Why don't we get you a makeover while you're here?" she would offer, as though my appearance was somehow embarrassing to her. I tried adapting to please her. I bought new clothes that she approved of, though they sat uncomfortably on my body and drained my limited retirement budget. I stopped sharing stories about my friends or activities, sensing they bored her. I became increasingly careful about what I said, around her walking on eggshells, to avoid her subtle sighs of disapproval. Michael was polite, but distant, clearly taking cues from Sophia about how to treat me. When they had their daughter Lily, I was overjoyed at becoming a grandmother, but quickly realized my role would be limited. "Mum, we prefer to limit screen time, so maybe just one video call per month," Sophia informed me when I asked about regular FaceTime sessions with my granddaughter. Even my offers to help with childcare during summer breaks were gently but firmly declined. We have a wonderful nanny with early childhood education credentials. Sophia explained the implication clear that my 40 years of teaching experience wasn't quite good enough for precious Lily. Despite these hurts, I maintained an optimistic outlook. I kept busy in retirement, volunteering at my local library, tending my garden, and enjoying weekly lunches with my friend Betty, who had been my colleague at the elementary school for 20 years. Sophia's just busy with her career and motherhood. I would explain to Betty when she noticed how infrequently my daughter called. She'll appreciate me more when things slow down. 3 years into my retirement, I received a call from Sophia that would set in motion the events leading to that terrible night. Mum, Michael and I need to talk to you about something important, Sophia said, her voice unusually formal. Can you come to Seattle this weekend? We'll pay for your flight. The offer to pay for my travel was unusual and immediately sent warning signals through my mind. In all the years since her success, Sophia had never offered to pay for my visits, insisting I could afford it on my pension. Is everything okay? Is it about Lily? I asked, concerned. Everything's fine. We just need to discuss some things about your future, in person. As I hung up the phone, a knot formed in my stomach. Something about her tone felt ominous, as though decisions had already been made without my input. Still, I packed my suitcase and prepared for the trip, unaware that my life was about to change forever. When I arrived at Sophia and Michael's house that Friday evening, the atmosphere felt immediately different. Usually, Lily would run to greet me with excited hugs, but this time she was nowhere to be seen. We arranged for Lily to have a sleepover at her friend's house, Sophia explained, taking my coat. We wanted to have an adult conversation without interruptions. Michael guided me to their formal living room rather than the family room where we normally gathered. They had set out a cheese plate and wine, an oddly formal touch that increased my unease. I perched on the edge of an uncomfortable designer chair, while they sat together on the sofa across from me. Mum, Sophia began, exchanging a glance with Michael. We've been concerned about you lately. Concerned about what? I asked, genuinely confused. We've noticed some concerning patterns, she continued. Forgetfulness, disorganization, some poor decision-making. I felt my defenses rise immediately. What are you talking about? I'm perfectly fine. Michael leaned forward, adopting what I assumed was his doctor voice. Ella, memory issues often begin subtly. The person experiencing them is usually the last to notice. Last month you misplaced your house keys and called Sophia in a panic, he continued. You forgot our dinner reservation date when we visited Portland. And you mentioned spending quite a bit of your retirement funds on redoing your garden, which honestly seems financially irresponsible at your age. I was speechless for a moment, processing their accusations. The keys incident had happened once, after a particularly exhausting day volunteering. The dinner reservation mix-up had been because Sophia changed the date without confirming with me. And the garden renovation was my joy. A modest project I had saved for specifically. Those are normal occasional lapses that anyone might have, I finally responded. I'm not experiencing cognitive decline, if that's what you're suggesting. Sophia sighed dramatically. Mum, there's no shame in admitting you might need some help. We've been researching options, and we think it would make sense for you to sell your house and move into a senior apartment complex near us in Seattle. Sell my house? I repeated, stunned. The home your father and I shared for decades. Where you grew up. It's too big for you now, Michael interjected. The maintenance alone must be overwhelming, and the stairs could become dangerous as you get older. I'm only 68, I protested. I'm in excellent health. My doctor just gave me a clean bill of health last month. Physical health is different from cognitive health, Sophia countered. We're just thinking about what's best for your future. If you lived closer to us, we could keep an eye on you. The conversation continued in this vein for hours. Every objection I raised was countered with a patronizing explanation about why I couldn't trust my own judgment. By the end of the evening, I felt drained and diminished, though I had conceded nothing. "Just promise you'll think about it," Sophia said as she walked me to the guest room. "We only want what's best for you." That night, I barely slept, turning their words over in my mind. This wasn't just a single conversation. It was the beginning of a campaign. Over the next several months, Sophia escalated her efforts to control my life. She began calling daily, ostensibly to check in, but really to monitor me. She questioned every decision I mentioned, from which brand of appliance I purchased, to replace my broken microwave, to which movies I saw with Betty. "Mum, why would you waste money on a high-end microwave at your age?" she would ask. Or, "Are you sure you should be driving to the movie theatre at night? Your night vision isn't what it used to be." Then came the financial intrusions. Sophia suggested I add her to my bank accounts in case of emergency. When I hesitated, she became insistent. "It's the responsible thing to do, Mum. What if something happens to you? I need to be able to manage your affairs." I reluctantly agreed to add her as a contact person, but refused to give her direct access to my accounts. This compromise clearly frustrated her, though she tried to hide it. The medical interference was perhaps the most disturbing. Without consulting me, Sophia scheduled an appointment with a geriatric psychiatrist. "I've already paid the consultation fee," she informed me. "It's non-refundable, so you might as well go." When I expressed anger at this overreach, she became tearful. "I'm just worried about you, Mum. Why won't you let me help you?" The manipulation was so effective that I actually found myself apologizing to her. After particularly difficult interactions with Sophia, I would call Betty to vent my frustrations. Always practical. Betty began to express serious concerns. "Ella, this isn't normal parent-child concern," she warned me during one of our lunch dates. "She's trying to take over your life, not help you maintain your independence." "Surely she means well," I said, still reluctant to attribute malicious intent to my only child. "Meaning well and doing well are different things," Betty countered. "Have you heard of elder abuse? It's not always physical. Sometimes it's emotional or financial. What Sophia's doing, infantilizing you, trying to control your finances, making medical decisions without your consent. These are warning signs." Her words struck me deeply. That evening, I spent hours researching elder abuse and controlling adult children online. The patterns described matched my situation exactly. Articles suggested documenting incidents to establish a pattern of behavior. So I began keeping a detailed journal of every interaction with Sophia, noting dates, times, and exactly what was said. I also started recording our phone conversations using an app on my smartphone. It felt sneaky, but as the experts suggested, documentation would be essential if things escalated further. I never imagined how quickly that escalation would come. The doorbell rang at 7:30 on a Tuesday evening. I wasn't expecting visitors, and my heart sank when I peered through the peephole to see Sophia and Michael standing on my porch. Unannounced visits were unlike them. They typically planned everything meticulously, which immediately put me on alert. "Surprise!" Sophia exclaimed with forced cheerfulness when I opened the door. "We were in Portland for a conference and thought we'd drop by." As they entered my living room, I discreetly slipped my phone into my cardigan pocket, the recording app already running. My journalist friend had recommended this after hearing about my situation, and tonight's unexpected visit seemed like exactly the kind of interaction I should document. "Can I get you something to drink?" I offered, trying to maintain normalcy. "No need, Mum. We can't stay long," Sophia replied, exchanging a meaningful glance with Michael. "We actually came with some exciting news." They settled onto my couch while I took my favorite armchair, the one Richard had given me for our 25th anniversary. Something about their body language, too stiff, too rehearsed, sent warning signals through my mind. "We've found the perfect place for you," Sophia announced, her voice bright, but her eyes watchful. "Golden Sunset Assisted Living. It's only 15 minutes from our house in Seattle." My stomach dropped. "Assisted living? I don't need assisted living. I'm completely independent." "It's more of a precautionary step," Michael interjected smoothly. "They have independent living units, but care available if needed." "We've already put down a deposit to hold a unit," Sophia continued. "They rarely have openings, so we had to move quickly." "You put down a deposit without even discussing it with me." My voice rose in disbelief. "Mum, we've been discussing this for months." Sophia sighed as though I were a forgetful child. "You agreed it made sense to move closer to us." "I never agreed to assisted living," I protested. "I never agreed to move at all." Michael leaned forward, his voice taking on that condescending professional tone I'd grown to hate. "Ella, resistance to necessary changes can be a sign of cognitive rigidity. It's actually quite common in early-stage dementia." "I do not have dementia." I stood up, anger finally overcoming my usual desire to keep the peace. "I've had a complete physical and cognitive assessment just last month, which you would know if you'd bothered to ask, instead of making decisions behind my back." "Mom, calm down," Sophia said, her voice maddeningly patient. "This emotional outburst just confirms our concerns." "It's not an emotional outburst to object to having my life rearranged without my consent." "We've already packed some of your essential items," Sophia continued as if I hadn't spoken. "The moving company comes next week. We can sell the house once you're settled in Seattle." "Sell my house without my permission? That's not legally possible," I said, struggling to keep my voice steady. Michael cleared his throat uncomfortably. "Actually, we've been in touch with Dr. Reynolds about having you evaluated for capacity. If necessary, Sophia can petition for guardianship to make these decisions in your best interest." The room seemed to tilt around me as I grasped the full implication of his words. They weren't just making suggestions. They were planning to have me declared incompetent to legally take control of my life. "Get out," I whispered, then louder. "Get out of my house right now." "Mom, you're being irrational," Sophia began, but fell silent when I moved to the front door and yanked it open. "Leave, now, both of you." They exchanged glances, but rose slowly. As Sophia passed me, she noticed the phone peeking out of my pocket, the recording app's red light visible. "What's this?" she demanded suddenly, snatching the phone from my pocket. "Are you recording us?" Before I could respond, her face contorted with anger. She looked at the screen, confirming her suspicion. "You've been spying on us. Recording our private conversations." She was livid now, her composure completely shattered. "I have a right to document what happens in my own home," I replied, trying to grab my phone back. But Sophia was faster. In a moment of rage I'll never forget, she raised my phone high and smashed it violently against the hardwood floor. The screen shattered instantly, pieces skittering across the entryway. "You won't need this anymore," she said, her voice cold with contempt. "I'll decide what's best for you from now on." The shock of her action left me speechless. This wasn't my little girl with gap-toothed smiles. This wasn't the daughter I'd raised with love and sacrifice. This was a stranger, someone who saw me as a problem to be managed rather than a person to be respected. Michael looked uncomfortable, but said nothing to defend me. His silence was its own betrayal. "We'll be back tomorrow with Dr. Reynolds," Sophia said as they stepped outside. "Pack an overnight bag. You'll be staying with us until the Golden Sunset unit is ready." After they left, I collapsed onto the floor beside the remains of my phone, sobbing uncontrollably. The violation went beyond the broken device. She had shattered any illusion that she respected me as an independent adult. The contempt in her eyes had made one thing crystal clear in her mind: I no longer had the right to make my own decisions. When my tears finally subsided, I felt a strange calm descend. In that moment of clarity, I knew what I had to do. If I stayed tomorrow would bring a psychiatrist, hand-picked by them, an evaluation was designed to find me incompetent, and the beginning of the end of my autonomy. My hands shaking, I reached for my landline and dialed Betty's number. "Betty," I said when she answered, "I need your help. Tonight. And I need you to keep a secret." As I outlined my desperate plan, Betty's immediate, unhesitating agreement confirmed what I already suspected. This wasn't a normal family disagreement. This was an emergency, and I needed to escape. That night I didn't sleep. Instead, I moved methodically through my house, gathering essential documents: birth certificate, social security card, insurance papers, bank statements. I withdrew $5,000 from my emergency cash fund, hidden in Richard's old toolbox. I packed only what would fit in one suitcase: practical clothing, medications, and a few irreplaceable mementos, including my wedding photo and the Mother's Day cards Sophia had made as a child. As dawn broke, I took one last look around the home where I'd raised my family, where Richard and I had built our life together. "I'll be back," I whispered, though I wasn't sure if it was true. "This is still my home." At exactly 6:30 a.m., Betty's car pulled into my driveway. I locked the front door, leaving my house key on the kitchen counter. The symbolism wasn't lost on me. I was walking away from everything familiar to preserve the one thing Sophia seemed determined to take from me: my autonomy. As Betty pulled away from the curb, I resisted the urge to look back. Instead, I focused on the road ahead, uncertain where it would lead, but certain of one thing: I would not be declared incompetent and locked away by my own daughter, not without a fight. Betty drove steadily north on Interstate 5, neither of us speaking much for the first hour. The weight of what I was doing, essentially running away from home at 68, kept me lost in my thoughts. "Are you sure about this?" Betty finally asked as we crossed the Washington state line. "It's not too late to turn around. If I go back, I'll be in an assisted living facility by the end of the week," I replied, watching the familiar landscape rush past. Sophia won't stop until she has complete control. Our destination was Bellingham, a coastal city near the Canadian border, 6 hours from Portland and 2 hours north of Seattle. Betty's cousin owned several rental properties there and had agreed to rent me a small one-bedroom apartment, no questions asked. Most importantly, he agreed to keep my name off any paperwork. The lease would be in Betty's name. "Martin says the place is furnished nothing fancy, but clean and in a safe neighborhood," Betty explained. "Walking distance to shops and the library." I nodded gratefully. After decades of home ownership, returning to apartment living would be an adjustment, but the alternative was unthinkable. By early afternoon, we arrived at the small apartment complex. The unit was on the second floor, a climb that would have Sophia declaring it unsafe for me, which brought a grim smile to my face. Inside the apartment was basic but clean. A living room with a worn but comfortable sofa, a small kitchen with dated appliances, a bedroom with a double bed, and a bathroom with a shower stall instead of a tub. "It's perfect," I told Betty sincerely. "It's mine." Betty helped me unpack my meager belongings, making a list of essentials I would need to purchase. Before leaving, she handed me a prepaid cell phone. "My number is programmed in," she explained. "Don't call from it unless it's an emergency. I'll check in with you regularly from burner phones I'll get at convenience stores. If Sophia questions me, I need to be able to honestly say I haven't heard from you." We hugged tightly, both fighting tears. Betty had risked her friendship with Sophia to help me escape something I would never forget. "Are you sure you don't want me to stay a few days?" she asked. "I need to learn to navigate this new life on my own," I replied. "And you need to get back before anyone realizes you were gone this long." After Betty left, I stood in the silent apartment, the enormity of what I'd done washing over me. I had disappeared from my life, abandoned my home, left no forwarding address. The next day, Sophia would arrive at my empty house to find me gone. No note, no explanation. That first night was the hardest. Every noise in the unfamiliar building startled me. I kept checking the locks, imagining Sophia somehow tracking me down. I barely slept, listening for footsteps in the hallway, convinced that at any moment there would be a pounding on the door. The next morning, I forced myself to venture out wearing sunglasses and a hat I'd never worn in front of Sophia. The disguise felt ridiculous, but the fear of being recognized was overwhelming. At the local grocery store, I jumped when a cashier asked for my phone number for their rewards program. "I don't have one yet," I stammered, paying cash for my items. Over the next few days, I established a routine designed to build a new identity while remaining invisible. I used my middle name Marie, introducing myself as Marie Wilson rather than Ella Thompson. I registered for a library card using the apartment's address and Betty's name as my reference. The local library became my sanctuary. I spent hours there reading newspapers, using the public computers to research resources for seniors living independently, and gradually making casual acquaintances with the staff. "You must be new to town," the reference librarian, a kind woman named Janet, observed after seeing me there several days in a row. "Recently widowed," I replied, sticking to my cover story. "Needed a fresh start." The tiny lie pained me. Richard had been gone 12 years, but I needed a plausible explanation for being alone in a new city. 2 weeks after my disappearance, I found a part-time job at a small independent bookstore 3 blocks from my apartment. The owner, a retired English professor named Harold, was delighted to hire someone with my teaching background. "The youngsters who apply know technology, but can't recommend a book to save their lives," he grumbled during my informal interview. "We need someone who's actually read the classics." The job provided more than just the supplemental income I needed to stretch my savings. It gave me purpose and human connection. For 4 hours each day, I could lose myself in discussing books with customers, organizing displays, and helping with children's story hour, using skills from my teaching career that Sophia had dismissed as irrelevant. Meanwhile, through Betty's careful updates, I learned about the chaos my disappearance had caused. Sophia had indeed arrived the morning after our confrontation, psychiatrist in tow, only to find my house empty. She'd called the police, reported me missing, and launched a frantic search. "She's oscillating between worry and rage," Betty reported during one of our weekly phone calls using a disposable phone she purchased solely for contacting me. "The police don't consider you a high-priority missing person since you left voluntarily, and there's no evidence of foul play. They basically told her that adults have the right to disappear if they want to." I felt a twinge of guilt hearing about Sophia's distress, but it was overshadowed by the memory of her face as she smashed my phone, that look of cold contempt that had made her a stranger to me. As weeks turned into months, my new life took shape. I joined a seniors yoga class at the community center, made casual friendships with neighbors who knew nothing of my past, and established myself as a reliable employee at the bookstore. I followed news from Portland through online newspapers, learning that Sophia had eventually listed my house for sale, presumably using the power of attorney I'd granted her years ago for medical emergencies. The sale of my home should have devastated me, but instead it fueled my resolve. She had taken my house, but she hadn't broken my spirit. Each day of independence was its own victory proof that I was exactly what I'd claimed to be: a competent adult, capable of making my own decisions. Still, in quiet moments, I would take out the family photos I'd brought and trace Sophia's face with my finger, remembering the little girl who had once looked at me with adoration instead of assessment. I missed my granddaughter Lily, fiercely wondering if she even asked about me anymore. These moments of grief would wash over me unexpectedly, leaving me breathless with loss. Then 6 months into my new life, Betty called with alarming news. Sophia hired a private investigator, she said, her voice tense. She's determined to find you. She's been showing your photo around Portland, talking to all our former colleagues. The PI has been asking questions at my book club. I think they might be watching me, hoping I'll lead them to you. My hands trembled as I absorbed this information. My carefully constructed new life suddenly felt precarious. Do you think they'll trace me to Bellingham? I asked, panic rising in my throat. Eventually they might, Betty admitted. These investigators are thorough. They could check car rentals, credit card transactions, property records. Even with our precautions, there's always a trail. That night, I stood at my apartment window scanning the parking lot for unfamiliar vehicles, wondering if even now someone might be watching, reporting back to Sophia. The freedom I'd fought so hard for suddenly felt like an illusion, a temporary reprieve before the inevitable confrontation. By the 9-month mark of my new life in Bellingham, I had established a comfortable routine. My part-time job at Harold's bookstore had expanded to include organizing author events and book club meetings. My tiny apartment felt like home, decorated with thrift store finds and small treasures from weekend explorations of local shops. Most importantly, I had developed a new sense of confidence in my abilities. After decades of being someone's wife and someone's mother, I was finally just Ella, or Marie, as everyone in Bellingham knew me. The freedom to define myself was exhilarating. I enrolled in a community college computer class, specifically designed for seniors, overcoming my technophobia one keyboard command at a time. The instructor, a patient young man named Tyler, never made me feel foolish for asking basic questions. "You're one of my best students, Ja," he told me after I successfully created my first PowerPoint presentation. "You actually want to learn, not just check a box." My physical health improved dramatically without the constant stress of walking on eggshells around Sophia. The yoga classes strengthened my balance and flexibility. I joined a walking group that met 3 mornings a week to stroll along the waterfront. My blood pressure, slightly elevated during my last years in Portland, returned to normal levels. One of my most meaningful new relationships was with Margaret, an 82-year-old former university administrator who lived in my apartment building. During a power outage one evening, we found ourselves sharing candles and conversation in the building lobby. "My son tried to put me in a home after my husband died," Margaret confided as we sipped tea from thermos cups. "Said it was for my own good, but really he wanted to sell my house and get his inheritance early." "What did you do?" I asked, sensing a kindred spirit. "Told him I'd disinherit him if he brought it up again." She chuckled. "Sometimes you have to be tough to maintain your independence." Margaret became my closest friend in Bellingham. Unlike Betty, who was my connection to the past, Margaret represented possibilities for my future, vibrant, engaged aging on my own terms. Inspired by our conversations about elder rights, I started an anonymous blog called The Invisible Woman, sharing my experiences and offering advice to other seniors facing controlling family members. I was careful to change identifying details, but the emotional truth of my situation resonated with readers. Within months, the blog had thousands of followers, many sharing similar stories. "Your posts helped me recognize the signs of financial abuse in my own family," one reader commented. "I've taken steps to protect myself thanks to you." The blog became more than just a creative outlet. It became a platform for advocacy. I researched elder law, interviewed experts via email, and compiled resources for seniors seeking to maintain their autonomy. What had begun as a personal journal transformed into a mission. Meanwhile, Sophia's emails continued to arrive in the account I still checked occasionally. Her tone evolved from angry accusations. How could you disappear like this? Do you have any idea what you've put us through? To concerned, please. Mum, we're worried sick. Please, just let us know you're okay. To eventual remorse. I've been seeing a therapist who's helped me understand how controlling I was. I'm so sorry, Mum. Please come home. I read each message carefully, but wasn't ready to respond. The wound was still too fresh, the trust too thoroughly broken. How could I believe her remorse was genuine, rather than another manipulation tactic? Betty kept me informed about developments in Portland. Sophia had indeed sold my house, but contrary to my fears, she had deposited the proceeds into a separate account in my name, rather than appropriating the funds. She'd placed most of my furniture and personal items in storage, rather than disposing of them. She tells anyone who'll listen that she drove you away with her controlling behavior, Betty reported. She's been attending family therapy sessions and support groups for adult children of aging parents. These reports gave me pause. Was it possible Sophia was genuinely recognizing her mistakes? Or was this another calculated strategy to lure me back under her influence? I was pondering these questions one rainy Tuesday afternoon, arranging a new display of mystery novels at the bookstore, when I looked up to see a familiar figure browsing the fiction section. My heart nearly stopped. Sophia. She hadn't noticed me yet. Her attention focused on the book spines. She looked thinner than I remembered her usually immaculate appearance, slightly disheveled. Dark circles underlined her eyes, visible even from across the store. I froze, calculating my options. The store's back exit was just behind the counter. I could slip away unnoticed. I could hide in the stockroom until she left. I could pretend to be someone else, counting on my changed appearance. Shorter, greyer hair and simple clothes instead of the styled look I'd maintained in Portland. Before I could decide, Sophia turned and our eyes met. The shock on her face mirrored my own internal panic. For a long moment we stared at each other across the rows of bookshelves, neither moving nor speaking. Harold appeared from the stockroom, breaking the tableau. "Marie, did you finish with those new Patterson novels?" "Oh, hello," he added, noticing Sophia. "Can we help you find something?" Sophia's gaze never left my face. "I found what I was looking for," she said quietly, "after a very long search." I felt as if I might faint as Sophia slowly approached. Harold, sensing the tension, looked between us with concern. "Marie, do you need a moment?" he asked, using the name I'd adopted in Bellingham. "It's okay, Harold," I managed to say. "This is an old friend. Could you cover the register for a while?" Harold nodded and retreated, though he kept casting curious glances our way. "Ella," Sophia whispered when we were relatively alone in the quiet bookstore. "Mum, it's really you. How did you find me?" I asked, my voice steadier than I expected. "The private investigator finally tracked you to Bellingham last month," she admitted. "But I couldn't just show up at your apartment. I needed time to prepare." She gestured vaguely around the bookstore. "I've been coming here every day for a week, hoping to see you." The owner mentioned his part-time employee, Marie, who was a former teacher. I crossed my arms defensively. "So you've been stalking me?" Sophia flinched at the word. "I've been trying to find the courage to face you, to apologize." "For what exactly?" I asked. "For trying to declare me incompetent. For smashing my phone when I tried to protect myself, for attempting to force me into assisted living against my will. For all of it," she said, her eyes filling with tears. "I was wrong, so terribly wrong." Despite the months of separation and the hurt that still burned fresh, Seeing my daughter cry awakened the mother in me, but I resisted the urge to comfort her. This conversation needed to happen without the easy reconciliation Sophia might be expecting. "I can't talk here," I said, glancing around the store where a few customers were browsing. "My shift ends at 5. Could we meet somewhere? A coffee shop, maybe?" Sophia asked, hope evident in her voice. "The Waterfront Cafe, 2 blocks east. 5:30. I agreed, then added firmly, "Just you, not Michael, not anyone else." Sophia nodded quickly. "Of course. Just me. I promise." After she left, I went through the motions of work, my mind racing with questions. How would this conversation go? What did Sophia really want? Was I ready to re-enter her life, or would doing so mean surrendering the independence I'd fought so hard to establish? Harold approached as I was shelving books, his expression concerned. "Everything okay, Marie? You look like you've seen a ghost." "In a way I have," I replied honestly. "That was my daughter. We've been estranged." Harold nodded sympathetically. "Family complications. I understand. Take tomorrow off if you need it." At 5:30 precisely, I entered the Waterfront Cafe, spotting Sophia at a corner table with 2 cups already waiting. She stood awkwardly as I approached, clearly unsure whether to attempt a hug. I solved the dilemma by sitting down immediately. "I ordered you chamomile tea," she said. "You always said it calmed your nerves." The fact that she remembered this small detail shouldn't have moved me, but it did. "Why are you here, Sophia?" I asked directly, wrapping my hands around the warm mug. She took a deep breath. "To apologize. To try to understand why I behaved so horribly. To ask if there's any way to rebuild what I destroyed." "You treated me like an incompetent child," I said, my voice low but intense. "You tried to take over my life, my home, my decisions. You were going to have me declared incompetent." "I know," she whispered, unable to meet my eyes. "There's no excuse for what I did." "Then why would my own daughter try to strip me of my dignity and independence?" Sophia was silent for a long moment, collecting her thoughts. "After Dad died, I was terrified of losing you too," she finally said. "Every time you mentioned a minor health issue or a forgotten appointment, my mind catastrophized. I convinced myself you were declining and needed protection. Protection from what? My own decisions. I told myself it was about your safety, but my therapist helped me see the truth." Sophia looked up, her eyes red-rimmed but clear. "It was about control, about my fear of mortality, yours and ultimately my own. About my arrogance in thinking my Ivy League education somehow made me better equipped to make your decisions than you were." I sat back, surprised by her insight. This didn't sound like the rehearsed apology I had expected. "I've been in intensive therapy since you left," she continued. "At first I was just angry. How could you abandon me? But gradually I started to see the situation from your perspective. How frightening it must have been to have your daughter trying to take over your life. How violated you must have felt. You were going to lock me away," I said, the hurt still raw. "You broke my phone when I tried to document what you were doing." Shame colored her face. That moment, seeing the rage in my own actions, it haunts me. I didn't recognize myself. The person who did that. I don't want to be that person. We talked for hours, the cafe emptying around us as closing time approached. Sophia detailed her journey since my disappearance, the frantic search, the gradual realization of her wrongdoing, the therapy sessions that forced her to confront her controlling behavior. "Michael and I separated," she revealed. He couldn't understand why I was suddenly questioning our approach with you. He still thinks you need management. This surprised me. Sophia and Michael had seemed like such a united front. The night you disappeared changed everything, she continued. I arrived at your house with Dr. Reynolds, ready to begin the competency evaluation process. Finding you gone, it was like a bucket of ice water. Suddenly I could see how desperate our actions had made you feel. It wasn't a spur-of-the-moment decision, I told her. Your behavior had been building for months. The phone incident was just the final straw. Sophia nodded. I know that now. I've read about elder abuse, about how adult children can become controlling under the guise of protection. I recognized myself in those descriptions, and it horrified me. As the cafe staff began stacking chairs, I realized we needed to conclude our conversation. The question hanging between us was obvious. Where did we go from here? I'm not moving back to Portland, I said firmly. I've built a life here. I have friends, a job, I enjoy a community. I understand, Sophia replied. I'm not asking you to uproot yourself again. I just want some kind of relationship if you think that's possible. On your terms, not mine. I considered her request carefully. The pain she'd caused was real, but so was the effort she seemed to be making toward genuine change. I need time, I finally said. This is a lot to process. We can't just pick up where we left off pretending nothing happened. Of course, she agreed quickly. Whatever you need. Could we maybe meet again in a few days? Just to talk more? I nodded slowly. Saturday. Same time, same place. As I stood to leave, I added, and Sophia, I need your word that you won't try to interfere with my life here. No surprise visits to my apartment. No contacting my employer or friends. Absolute boundaries, she promised. I respect your privacy and independence completely. As we parted outside the cafe, Sophia hesitated, then asked softly, Do you think you could ever forgive me? I don't know. I answered honestly, but I'm willing to find out. Walking back to my apartment, I felt strangely lighter. The confrontation I'd feared for months had happened, and while nothing was resolved, at least the hiding was over. For better or worse, my past and present had collided, and now I needed to determine what shape my future would take. Over the next year, Sophia and I rebuilt our relationship piece by careful piece. Our weekly coffee meetings gradually evolved into occasional dinners, museum visits, and walks along Bellingham's scenic waterfront. Each encounter was governed by clear boundaries that Sophia meticulously respected. I never moved back to Portland. My Bellingham apartment remained my home, my sanctuary. Sophia would drive up from Seattle, where she had relocated after her separation from Michael became permanent. Their divorce finalized 6 months after our reunion had been prompted in part by their fundamental disagreement about how to handle me. He still believes I was right the first time, Sophia explained during one of our conversations, that you needed intervention supervision. He can't understand why I changed my perspective. And why did you? I asked, still sometimes questioning her transformation. Because I finally saw you as a person, not just my mother, she replied. A whole person with rights, dignity, and the ability to make your own choices, even if they're different from what I would choose. This new understanding extended to other areas of Sophia's life. She began volunteering at a senior rights advocacy organization, using her legal expertise to help older adults facing guardianship challenges. The controlling tendencies that had driven her behavior toward me were gradually channeled into productive advocacy. My relationship with my granddaughter Lily, now 8, also needed healing. Our first reunion was awkward. She barely remembered her grandmother, who had mysteriously disappeared from her life. But children are remarkably adaptable. During Sophia's visits to Bellingham, Lily often accompanied her, and we developed new traditions, baking cookies together, exploring tide pools along the coast, and reading the same books so we could discuss them. Grandma, why did you go away before? Lily asked during one of these visits, her directness catching me off guard. I looked at Sophia, unsure how to respond, but she nodded encouragingly. We had agreed to be truthful with Lily in age-appropriate ways. Sometimes grown-ups disagree about important things, I explained carefully. Your mum and I had a big disagreement about where I should live and how I should make decisions. I felt I needed some space to make my own choices. Lily considered this thoughtfully. Like when I want to pick my own clothes, but mum thinks they don't match. I smiled at the simple comparison. Something like that, but about bigger things. Well, I'm glad you're back now, she declared, returning to her cookie decorating. My blog, The Invisible Woman, continued to grow in readership and impact. With Sophia's encouragement, I revealed my real identity and story, transforming what had been an anonymous platform into a powerful personal testimony. The blog attracted attention from media outlets interested in elder rights issues, leading to interview requests and speaking engagements. In an ironic twist, Sophia sometimes joined me for these speaking events, the two of us presenting our story as a cautionary tale and a message of hope about family reconciliation. Her legal background complemented my personal narrative, creating a compelling presentation about preventing elder abuse within families. The proceeds from my house sale, which Sophia had indeed preserved for me, provided financial security. I used a portion to establish a small foundation supporting older adults facing housing insecurity, a cause that had new meaning after my own experience. My friendship circle expanded to include both old connections like Betty, who remained a steadfast ally, and new friends like Margaret and Harold. These relationships, chosen freely without familial obligation, enriched my life in ways I hadn't experienced before. Most importantly, I maintained my independence. I continued working part-time at the bookstore, not because I needed the income, but because I valued the community connection. I made my own medical decisions, managed my own finances, and planned my own future. When Sophia suggested we look into senior housing options just for future planning, I was initially defensive. I'm perfectly capable of living independently. I bristled, old fears resurfacing. I know you are, she responded calmly. But having information doesn't commit you to any decision. You taught me that planning ahead is wise. If we look together, you maintain control of the process. It was a measure of our healing that I could recognize the difference between her former controlling behavior and this new collaborative approach. Together, we researched options ranging from aging-in-place modifications for my apartment to progressive care communities, all with the understanding that any decision would be mine alone to make. On the one-year anniversary of our reunion, Sophia arrived at our regular cafe with a small wrapped package. Inside was a new smartphone, not the latest model that would overwhelm me with unnecessary features, but one with a clear display and simplified interface. To replace the one I destroyed, she said quietly. I've programmed my number, Lily's and your friends, but I promise never to monitor your calls or question who you talk to. The gesture was symbolic but meaningful, an acknowledgement of past wrongs and a commitment to a different kind of relationship moving forward. Thank you, I said, accepting both the phone and the apology it represented. As we sat drinking our tea, watching boats on the harbour, I reflected on the journey we'd taken. The pain of betrayal had led to an unexpected rebirth for both of us. Sophia had confronted her controlling tendencies and grown into a more respectful daughter. I had discovered strengths and capabilities I might never have recognized had I remained in my comfortable Portland routine. What are you thinking about, Mum? Sophia asked, noticing my contemplative mood. about how sometimes the most painful ruptures create space for new growth. I replied. If you hadn't pushed me to that breaking point, I might never have found my voice or this new purpose. I would give anything to undo the hurt I caused you, she said softly. But then we wouldn't be here having learned what we've learned, I pointed out. Sometimes the path forward requires a painful break from the past. Later that evening, after Sophia had returned to Seattle, I updated my blog with reflections on our year of reconciliation. I wrote about the delicate balance between forgiveness and maintaining boundaries, about how healing doesn't erase the past, but creates possibility for the future. The daughter who once tried to control my life has become my strongest advocate for independence, I wrote. And the mother who ran away in fear has found the courage to set boundaries while keeping her heart open. Neither of us is perfect, but we're learning together what respect truly means between adult family members. As I posted these words, I felt a profound sense of peace. The trauma of that night when Sophia smashed my phone would always be part of our story, but it was no longer the defining chapter. We had written new pages together, pages of mutual respect, careful listening, and genuine care. At 69 years old, I had discovered that it's never too late to stand up for your dignity, to establish healthy boundaries, or to rebuild broken relationships on stronger foundations. My life's third act had become more authentic and meaningful than I could have imagined. Have you ever had to take a dramatic step to maintain your independence or dignity? How did you handle family members who tried to control your choices? Share your experiences in the comments below. If my story resonated with you, please hit that like button and subscribe to hear more journeys of resilience and renewal. And if you know someone struggling with family boundaries, please share this video with them. Sometimes knowing we're not alone makes all the difference. Thank you for listening to my story. And remember, your age never diminishes your right to respect dignity and self-determination.